Hello, I'm Dr. Roberta Zanoni from the University of Verona, and today I'm going to talk to you about outdoor spaces from the European sources to Romeo and Juliet. So I have decided to start from the well-known balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet. And I would like to actually problematize the word balcony and to focus on the word balcony and the word orchard and garden, and to see how these words have traveled from the sources to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. As you can see here, the balcony scene and the balcony itself has become iconic for the play itself, in the theatre, so in performance, but also in art, in the cinema. And this is Verona, my hometown, where this is Juliet's house, where we have the balcony, which has been actually built in the 30s by the municipality. So we have a case in which the play has influenced real life and not the opposite. So I would like to, I tried to focus on the idea of the balcony to show you that actually, however, in Romeo and Juliet, there is no mention of the balcony. And actually, what is mentioned is a window. We have a window in 2-2, which is the balcony scene, and a window also in 3-5, which is the so-called second balcony scene, when Romeo and Juliet say goodbye before Romeo's exile. So here in Shakespeare, there is no mention of the balcony. On the other hand, we have the window, which is mentioned 5 times. For what concerns outside spaces, we also have the orchard, which is mentioned 2 times. So in order to speak about the evolution and how these words have arrived to Shakespeare, and if they have arrived independently or if they have been mediated, I will use the SENS archive, which is an archive which has been created by the Skenè Research Centre from an idea of Professor Silvia Vigliazzi, and in collaboration with the Skenè Research team, with which I collaborate, and I have created the design of the archive and of the website of the Skenè Research Centre. So this is the SENS archive. So this is a page of Romeo and Juliet on the SENS archive. I will give you the link because this is an open access archive that it is still under construction, but it is searchable at the moment for what concerns the page of Romeo and Juliet, which is the one of the most complete. But you have also other plays. So if you click on Shakespeare's works, the ones on which you can click, for example, Much Ado About Nothing and The Two Gentlemen of Verona, there is some material, but the most complete one is Romeo and Juliet. So I will give you some examples today, and I hope if you are curious about it, you can ask me a question. I will give you the link so you can browse it and try to use it. There are so many different possibilities, functionalities. So try and click on all of the buttons and see what happens. So in the archive, and in particular, obviously in Romeo and Juliet's page, we have, for instance, classification of the sources between narrative sources, main narrative sources, hypertext, and analogues. Today I will focus on the main narrative sources. And let's see, for instance, the modernized. So in the archive, you can see the diplomatic, semi-diplomatic, and modernized editions of the texts. So this allows for a very wide type of research. As you can see here, we have on the left-hand side the text, the play with the scene, with the act and scene numbers. But on the right-hand side, we have divided the plays for what concerns Shakespeare, or the poems or the novellas, in segments in order to show how segments can correspond, and also in order for the user to be able to compare segments, different segments in different texts. So for instance, this is the prologue of the first quarto of Romeo and Juliet, which for us corresponds to the frame in the Porto. So as in the prologue, you can see that we have fair Verona, the two families, so it's the very well-known prologue. In the Porto's frame, we have Verona, and we have that a story has been told to the narrator, and we have this story is of two noble lovers which were led to miserable and pitiful death. Okay, so we can see that we also can compare the two texts on the same page. So, and this allows to have text comparison with not only with the Porto, with Bandello, sorry, this is the Porto again, with the Bandello, because as you can see, one segment in one text can correspond to more segments in other texts. And this also gives us an idea of how the texts have evolved. Because we know that, for instance, the Porto was the first to talk about Romeo and Juliet in Verona, Romeo e Giulietta. Then Bandello openly took inspiration from the Porto. Boaistuau openly took inspiration from Bandello, actually said he was translating Bandello in French, even if it's not a word-to-word translation, but it could be, we know that the link is clear with Bandello. Painter is a translation of Boaistuau, and then we have Brooke. But as you can see, you can already see a similarity between these different texts. And obviously, you can compare the first quarto with the second quarto. So you can scroll both the texts you have here and also the one in the pop-up. So obviously this ends here, but if it were longer, such as this one, you can scroll it. Okay, so you can scroll both texts to see how they go. So this is one of the main functionalities of this archive, which allows for multiple text comparison in one section. So let's go back to our presentation. So what happens, for instance, to the window in the sources, and why don't we have a balcony? Well, the first is a cultural reason. The balcony didn't exist in England at the time. As we can see here, this is Florio's Italian-English Dictionary, a world of words. We know there are suppositions about Shakespeare meeting Florio. It is possible that they met, that they were active at the same court, and so it is possible that Shakespeare had seen Florio's dictionary. In particular, in this dictionary, you have the word balcone. We have the word balcone. Balcone in Italian is, and for Florio, it is any window, namely a bay window, also a bath or style of a shop. So, in order to explain to the English what a balcony was, he used the word window. So this tells us that the word balcony wasn't used yet, and that actually balconies didn't exist as they did in Italy, and so it was translated with window. As we can see here from the OET, indeed, the word balcony has started to appear in 1618, but as you see here, it is still spelled in the Italian way, balcone, And also there is definition of what it is. So it's a sort of explanation of the word. So this means that the word could not, probably was not well known at the time. So the building itself did jet it out. And then you can see balcons or terraces. So again, a synonym to explain the term. But actually here in 1640, we see that the use starts, even if it's misspelled, windows and balconies. And then in 1735, you have the doors and the balconies ran. So it has started to be used, and you see also that the way of writing it has changed. So where does this balcony come from? So why is the balcony represented as such in Romeo and Juliet? Well, actually, we can see something in the sources, in particular in the Porto. In the Porto, we have two balcone, which is the balcony in English. And actually, we also have three finestra, which is the old way of saying finestra, which is the window. I also put the garden, but we'll talk about it later. So let's focus on the balcony. So it is interesting here to see how in the Porto we have the word balcone, and how actually that scene in which in Romeo and Juliet we have only a window is actually represented and now called as the balcony scene. So this is not obviously evidence that that Shakespeare might have read the Porto, but it could be evidence of the circulation of the Porto's novella or of its influence. Obviously, it's not enough to say that Shakespeare had read or come into contact with the Porto. But it is interesting to see how the depiction of this scene is linked, could be linked with the source, one of the sources of Romeo and Juliet. We have to say that the balcony is present also in Bandello, but it's a different balcony scene. So let's see what I'm talking about. And in the others, I will show you. As I will show you, there is no balcony. So in Boaistuau, in Painter, and in Brooke, we will only have windows. So here I am in the Porto's page, and this is the modernized edition of his Storia novelmente ritrovata di due nobili amanti. So let's see where the balcone appears. So as you can see, you can easily search the text. And here, this is the explanation in English. The segment 1 night, Julieta sees Romeo out of her window. She's concerned about his safety. Romeo defies dangers, well, Romeo, and declares his love and passion for Julieta. They decide to speak again some other night. So one night, as love wanted, the moon was shinier than usual. Romeo was about to climb on that balcony. And the girl came to open the window. So we have the balcony and the window, because obviously we have a window and the balcony. But it's interesting that this scene, in the you have the balcony. And she saw him, but he couldn't see her properly, and he feared that somebody else could open the balcony, and so he hid in the darkness, in the shadow of a wall. But then she says, "Che fate qui a quest'ora così solo?" So what do you do here at this time all alone? And he, that had recognized her now, says, "Quello che amore vuole," so what love wants. And so you see that the parallelisms are more than one. It's not only the word balcony that we can see. So as you can see here in Bandello, this scene, as I told you, the Porto is more concise and his novella is shorter, and it often corresponds to more than one segment in the others because he condenses a lot. So in Bandello, you have the segment 28, and so the various steps of the meeting of Romeo and Juliet in Bandello. And here we see that in Bandello, Giulietta is in her room, and we have the mention of the window in one of the scenes. And here you can see, and you can compare the various segments. So for example, here you have fenêtre, instead, so the window instead of the balcony in Boaistuau. So this was Boaistuau 34, and you see that painter is almost the same as Boaistuau. So painter is a very almost a word-to-word translation of Boaistuau, and you don't have the window. So we can see how, and obviously we can compare this with how camest thou hither, tell me and wherefore. And here you have another word that is really interesting, and that we can see that recurs in the various texts. So we have the orchard. So we see that the word balcony or window, which is something that opens up towards the outside. So it's an opening. And if you think of the balcony, it's something that protrudes outside of the house towards the natural space, links to, in Shakespeare, to the orchard. And on the other hand, let's see what happens in the sources. So in the sources, we can see that, well, in the Porto we have no garden, as I said, he's very concise, but in Bandello we have the giardino, in Boaistuau we have the jardin, and in painter garden, and in Brooke garden. So this scene happens in a garden. Let's see, for instance, for a second, what happens in Bandello and what happens in Bandello's balcony, and also where the garden is present. So as you can see here, you have the diplomatic, semi-diplomatic, and modernized edition. You can browse the website, and I hope we'll have time to discuss it more. So let's look for the balcony, balcone. So balcone here in Bandello is towards the end, when Giulietta eventually resolves to drink the sleeping potion. And it is not Giulietta who goes on the balcony, but it is the aurora, so the dawn. The dawn had started to put her head outside of the balcony of the east. So it's a metaphorical balcony, okay? It's not a physical, a real balcony as we have in the Porto, and also the position is very different. On the other hand, we have the finestra. Here, it's when Giulietta finds out Romeo's identity and despairs. And this is the place in which in the Porto we have the balcone. So here you see finestra. If I want to browse even the text I have on my right, I can do that. And you see I can look for the word. But let's go back to our finestra in Bandello. And it's this one. So one night he was in that place and Giulietta heard him. She opened the window. He hid, but then But then when he saw her, they started to talk. And so let's see also where does also the garden. So where do they meet? So the garden in English is the giardino. And in particular, as we can see, it's the place where the two lovers meet. So the night came, and Romeo and Pietro, they went, they climbed a wall to get to Giardino. He climbed the wall, and in the garden, he arrived in the garden where he found his wife. So he found Juliet. And they also make love in the garden. So the garden has a very powerful power. Is very powerful. Shows a very powerful scene in this particular part of Bandello. And as you can see, this reference to the garden is not found in the Porto, but is found in Boaistuau. Let's see. And we have it, jardin. So they entered the garden. It's very similar to Bandello, and you can see the same. So you can see the same in painter. So here he climbed up the garden wall, etc. And it's interesting how the garden becomes this secluded space in between the house, nature, but also the society. And there's a wall that divides these spaces. And here, obviously, and on the other hand, in Brooke, it's much longer. Let's see if we can find the word garden. Okay. So it's not here, but as you can see, you can browse the text to see what's there. So what about the garden in this case? So as I said before, for what concerns the balcony, in England, the balcony didn't exist. What about the garden and the orchard? Why did Shakespeare choose the word orchard? Well, first of all, in Italian, we have the word giardino, which is a garden or orchard. I'm taking Florio just as an example. But also we have the word orto, which could seem similar to orchard. But actually, well, and Florio translates with a garden, an orchard. On the other hand, this part of translation now doesn't help anymore in Italian. An orto in Italian is this. It's a vegetable garden. So it is not what Shakespeare might have used. And as you see in all the sources, we don't have orto, so in Bandello, for instance, or in da Porto, for instance, but we have giardino. So we have the garden. What does Shakespeare use? Shakespeare uses the orchard. So again, the orchard in English could be seen as so he wanted to represent a secluded space, a space next to the house, but not exactly in the house, at the same time separated from the city itself, because there's a wall, and secluded, in which private things could happen. So in Italian, we don't have, so the word for orchard in Italian is frutteto, but a frutteto is something much bigger than a garden. So it's bigger, it's in plain nature, it's not next to the house. So the word that we need in Italian is garden, giardino, as considered. So this is the giardino of a house. So next to the house, separate from it, but still very close to it. So this was an idea of what happens with these terms when they travel from the sources to Shakespeare. And I hope we will have time to discuss about it and discuss about the function of these different spaces in performance. Thank you.